All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome.
Nice to see you again. My name is Marty. I'm the science teacher here at the Delphian School. This is my friend and associate, James. He will be our technical advisor. If you have any questions or would like to communicate to us, use the Q&A box. Now, it seems like we're above space here, in outer space, but we're not. But what we're going to be talking about today is, you'll see. Matt, close your eyes for a moment. Are your eyes closed?
Yes.
Okay, good. And imagine you're on a huge spaceship and you're orbiting this star. James, would you pull up a picture of the spaceship?
My eyes are still closed.
No, okay. So here's what your spaceship looks like. This is it, planet Earth. Tomorrow is the 50th anniversary of what's called Earth Day. And in 1970, some people started Earth Day to make us aware that we're all space travelers on this ship. And it's time that we took good care of the ship and not let it get too dirty or too messy, and to take care of it like you would take care of anything that you owned. It's to help remind people to be environmentally aware. And what does that mean, environmentally? What does that mean to you, James?
Well, from the word, I'm going to have to guess that it means having to do with the environment.
Having to do the environment, with the area that you're living in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we want to keep the rivers clean and the air clean, and that's environmental protection. We're protecting the environment, the area that we're living in.
I don't know about you, but I like breathing clean air.
I don't trust any air I can't see, but that's because I'm from New York.
Yeah. Sarah says it means knowing what's happening in the environment.
In the environment, exactly. And so it was first celebrated in 1970, and it now includes events in more than 193 different countries. So 100, that's more fingers than we both have, fingers and toes. So it's 193 countries have joined in to help save and protect the environment. So it's sort of a new way of thinking about the Earth. We used to think, well, it's just where we live, and if a company is making something and they have the stuff that they don't need anymore, it was okay to just dump it in the water or have it go out into the air and smell things up. There was a river in, I forget where it was. I think it was Ohio.
Yes. Okay. So I grew up with this story being told to me to illustrate why it's important to take care of the planet, to take care of the area around us. Isha says it means you should not litter or pollute the earth. That's right. Precisely correct. And this story, I think every kid in Michigan and around the Great Lakes region heard this story growing up as the perfect example of why to take care of the area around you.
The Cayuga, was it the Cayuga River?
It might have been the Cayuga River. I heard about Lake Erie catching on fire. And if you think lakes are made of water, they should not catch on fire, you're absolutely correct. If a lake catches on fire, something has gone horribly wrong. And Lake Erie, it's this massive, huge lake. You stand on one side, you can't see the other side for most parts. And it had gotten so polluted. There was so much trash and oil and just junk dumped in it that, story goes, some guy was smoking a cigarette. He chucked the cigarette. He was done smoking. He chucked which you shouldn't do. You shouldn't smoke. So that was his first error. But then he chucked his cigarette out into the lake because, that's what he did. And instead of it going fizz and, going out because it's water, it caught the lake on fire. There was so much oil sitting on the top of it and so much trash, and it burned for days.
And other flammable, burnable things that maybe companies were just dumping into the water that's what happened. I heard it was with the Cayuga River, but it could have
might have
been
been
both.
that. It could have been both. I mean, there were some really, really nasty pollution things going on, especially in the 1970s. And I think this kind of leads to the point you're going to make in a few minutes. But in general, especially in America, I think we pay a lot more attention now than we did 50 years ago to how we operate and how it's affecting the environment.
That's right. So because tomorrow is the 50th anniversary of the first Earth Day, where it was brought to mind to take care of this planet and take care of the environment and don't pollute. I thought it would be an appropriate time to let you folks all know about Earth Day and what it all means and why it got started. So here's the effect. Could you bring up the next picture? The effect of the Clean Air Act was passed in 1970, and scientists believe it saves 160,000 lives in 2010 and 130,000 fewer heart attacks. So why would dirty air help create a heart attack?
Well, you were teaching a webinar last week about the heart and about just the systems in the body and blood vessels and stuff like this. And what you were talking about in there is what you put into your body affects what's going on in your body, which makes sense, right?
Well, your heart is a muscle and it needs oxygen.
It needs
to
oxygen.
function.
It needs to work.
Right. Well, what if when you're breathing in air instead of fresh air, you're breathing in air with other chemicals in it that maybe prevent the oxygen from getting to your heart and your lungs and your other organs, or it has other things that make you cough or can like narrow, instead of your air pipe being nice and big, it can make it narrow, or it could start to irritate that tube. That can't be good. And people who have heart problems to start with, this could just make things worse, and they could die because of this. It says here, by 2020, the Clean Air Act is expected to save over 230,000 lives. Just the fact that we've cleaned up the air, and that will save lots of lives, because that's what we're talking about. That's taking care of the planet. Taking care of the planet so the planet can take care of us.
Yeah.
Because if it's sort of a mutual kind of a thing, one helps the other. If we help the planet stay clean, the planet will help us stay alive. Let's bring up that next picture.
Yes, I will.
Before we have some questions?
Yeah. So Lorna made a good point about the surface of Lake Erie, all that trash and oil burning. She said, well, I suppose that cleaned the surface of the lake. I think it probably did clean it a bit.
Didn't do much for the air, though.
Probably made the air a little bit worse, cleaned the lake a bit. And I think it was a really good example to help show, like, we need to do something about this. We need to change something.
Right, but what about the fish living in that lake? And what about the people who caught the fish and ate the fish? That can't be good.
This is why I only eat candy. No, that's a joke.
You're not supposed to say that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Lorna also asked, what are heart attacks? A heart attack is, your heart is pumping, and it's pumping all the time every day. Things can go wrong. It can, like, the muscle will stop working for various reasons.
Right.
Sometimes.
Very often your heart is not. It could be blocked. There could be something blocking. Your heart's a muscle, so it needs air. It needs fuel. But if something is blocking it from getting it, maybe you had, too much candy or something the other day. No, candy won't do it, but it won't help. In any case, there are people that are having problems with their heart because their blood vessels, which are these tubes, should be nice and big and clear, start to develop these deposits that make it smaller and smaller. And if something gets stuck in that little tube, or if if there's some, if it just squeezes and gets too small, or maybe the heart is just working harder to get that blood through that little tube, that could cause too much stress on the heart and the heart could stop, and that's not good for anyone.
That's right. It's like when I'm trying to walk through the door and my brother's standing in the doorway. It's harder to get through the doorway.
Okay.
And Lily asked, what does pollute mean? Let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah.
I mean, air, just your normal air around you on planet Earth without any cars or factories or cities or anything around you. The air is a certain kind of clean. I mean, there's plenty of stuff in the air. There's pollen and there's this and that, but the air is clean. It's natural. It's the way nature has it on its own.
Especially in the country. But if you're in the city and you're walking or riding a bike behind a bus, how would that be? Yeah, that smelly stuff is in the air and the black little pieces are in the air.
Oh.
And that can't be, and you breathe that in and then it gets stuck in your lungs.
Yep.
That's a pollutant. That's something that makes something impure in a bad way. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about a pollution or a pollutant, something that makes things bad so that it's not good for your body.
Yep. And Haveria asks, what are asthma attacks? I can tell you all about asthma attacks.
Why is that, James?
Because I had really bad asthma as a kid growing up. And in asthma is a condition where it's hard for you to breathe sometimes. Your windpipes, the pipes in your body that you use to breathe get swollen up, they close up and they get really small and it's difficult to breathe. So it's not great. It's not comfortable. It's not fun. I'm so glad that I don't really have problems with my asthma anymore. And I think that I can, give a thank you to the Clean Air Act and just the concept of Earth Day, the concept of take care of the planet, clean the air, clean the water. I can be thankful for that, for helping make the air cleaner and making my life easier.
Right. So it's air pipes and air tubes. And sometimes these air tubes could get irritated by bus fumes, what comes out from the back of the bus, or other kinds of, or pollen. Some people have allergies to pollen, and that goes into their little tubes and it irritates it, and their tubes get smaller, and then it's harder to breathe, and you're walking down the street, you get tired because you're not getting as much oxygen as you should. That's what we're talking about with asthma.
That's right. Sarah asks, who's your brother? How rude of him to stand in the way. I agree, Sarah.
That's what brothers do.
I'll make sure.
That's what brothers do.
I make sure I will make sure I tell my brother about that.
He's being rude. The brother's being rude.
Yeah. And Lorna asks, would smoke kick up asthma? Yeah. Smoke will definitely not help the asthma. Sometimes, when I was a kid, I could be standing next to a campfire and I would be fine. And sometimes the smoke would bug me. Yeah. And you get smoke in your eyes, smoke in your face, and you kind of cough a little bit. Well, when you have asthma, and I see that several of you in the comments said that you also have asthma. So I'm with you on this one, guys. But for those of you who don't have asthma, sometimes when you start coughing, it starts to kind of, when you have an itch and you kind of itch it a little bit and it feels better, and then it gets worse and it itches worse. So you itch it and then it gets worse. That's what can happen with asthma sometimes. You start coughing and then it gets tougher to breathe, and you cough some more because it's hard to breathe and it gets tougher to breathe. So.
Yeah, I like your example of a campfire, though, because if you're around a campfire and the smoke is headed your way, that irritates the whole breathing, and it irritates your eyes, and that's sort of a pollution. That's sort of a normal, natural kind of pollution because it's just from logs burning. Mm-hmm. But what if it's other chemicals in the air
that's not good.
That can hurt your eyes and irritate your throat and your tubes, your breathing tubes? That's what we're talking about. That's what the Clean Air Act was trying to do and successfully did. It helped clean up the air. Let's take a look at our next picture.
Yep.
This is the effect of the Clean Water Act. So in addition to the Clean Air Act, which was passed in 1970, there was the Clean Water Act. Now that picture on your left shows this stream where companies were dumping
Oof.
all sorts of chemicals in there, and they didn't need the chemicals anymore. And they built these companies, they built the buildings right on the river, so
Yuck.
that when what do you do with this? Oh, just dump it in the river. Nobody will care. Well, the fish would care, and the people who eat the fish would care, and the people who tried to bathe in the, want to go swimming in the creek would care. And so people started saying this is wrong. And if a river catches fire, they started saying this is really wrong. We better do something about it to protect this planet, to help this planet. And so that's why the Clean Water Act was passed. And you could take a look at the same river. The picture on the right is after the Clean Water Act. And so nature has a way of recovering from problems that we give it, like pollution, but it needs help. If we can't keep polluting and imagine that nature is going to fight the pollution and all of a sudden have wonderful clean water. We need to help prevent pollution and prevent the spread of this kind of carelessness. And I mean, you wouldn't want to give something to somebody that was messed up. That's what these companies were doing. And there were no laws to protect our spaceship, the Earth, from these companies. But now there is, and now we have cleaner water and better lives as a result of it.
Yeah. Now, Isis asked a really good question here. How did we create all these toxic things, and why do we even need them?
Well,
you're asking the right questions.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Very often, when companies are making something, for instance, newspaper companies, they're printing newspapers, right? But they have a lot of things that they produce besides the newspapers. They have the ink, and then what's left over from the ink, what happens to that? Well, if they can't use it, they've got to get rid of it. And then there's the pulp, the stuff that the newspaper's made of, the wood pulp. And they can use some of it for the newspaper, but what they can't, they just get rid of. And what they used to do is dump it in the water. And so that's what would happen there. Or a chemical company would be making something, or a plastics company would be making something, and they have something left over that they can't use, and they would dump it in the water. And sometimes these are really poisonous or burnable things that are not good for the water at all. And so that's what would happen.
Yeah. Now, and the second half of her question was, why do we need these things? We could, and some people do choose to lead lives where you really don't use a lot of stuff that creates pollution. You don't use a lot of stuff that creates these leftover effects on the environment. And I think there needs to be a balance to it. I love cars, and I love the fact that I can hop into this little box and I can be hundreds of miles away within a few hours. I can drive up to Seattle and eat at my favorite restaurant in Seattle if I want to and spend a weekend there. Or I can get on a plane and fly, and in 5 hours, I can see my mom and dad. That's really cool.
Yeah.
But I think there's a good balance to it. The car that I drive now is way better for the environment than the cars of 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago.
And why is that, James?
Because a lot of people have done a lot of work to make cleaner cars and to make it so that 1 gallon of gas can get you farther.
Right. It's more environmentally friendly. If I have a car that can only travel 10 miles on a gallon of gas, that means I'm using a lot of gas, and out of the tailpipe of the gas comes all of these chemicals that are not so great for the air. But if I have a car that gets 30 miles to the gallon, well, I'm just producing 1/3 of the chemicals, of these bad chemicals. And so a lot of people have tried to help the environment by making cars more fuel efficient, and by having these other parts of the car so that what comes out of the back end of the car is not as polluting, is not as dangerous as what used to come out. You have all sorts of, there's all sorts of things in the car. I don't want to get, there's something called a catalytic converter. There, I said it. And all that means is it's a device that takes these really bad chemicals and makes them not so bad. And so there have been improvements over the years because we want to take care of our planet, because we want our planet to take care of us. It's sort of a, you know, we help our planet survive and our planet helps us survive. And it sounds like a good trade-off.
That's a good trade-off. Yep. Teamwork.
Okay.
Yeah.
So next we're going to pull up our next picture of a greenhouse. Now, when I talk about a greenhouse, I'm not talking about a house that's green. I'm talking about something like you see in the picture. It is something with a building with walls and a roof made of clear materials such as glass. Sometimes it's called a glass house. And sunlight comes through the glass and changes to heat. And then, so because the sunlight can travel through the glass without being stopped, but once it's heat, the heat gets reflected back into the greenhouse and it can't come out. And so that helps this greenhouse grow plants. Plants like it when it's warm. If it's freezing cold out, the plants are not going to grow. But if you have a greenhouse like this, it lets the light in, the light gets turned into, the sunlight gets turned into heat. The heat gets reflected back in when it tries to leave this greenhouse. It gets reflected back in and it's nice and warm in there. I don't know if you've ever been inside a greenhouse. I went last year and with my son, and we went to this farmer who had a greenhouse because we wanted to buy a certain kind of a fruit tree. And so we went in his greenhouse and it was maybe 25 degrees warmer.
Wow.
Inside. It was like hot in there. It was at 70 degrees. We walk in the greenhouse, it's 95 degrees. It
Wow.
was really hot. And so that's what greenhouses do. And so that's a good thing. It helps plants grow.
Now, I haven't been to a greenhouse recently, but I was sitting in my car the other day, and I didn't have the air conditioning running, and I was sitting in the sunshine, and it was getting warmer and warmer. And it wasn't really warm out that day. It was probably 55, 60 degrees, but I was getting pretty warm in the car with the sun.
Right.
Because the sun would come in, it would warm things up, and then the warmth would not leave. It was trapped in there.
If you don't have the windows open, then the car could act like a greenhouse. The windshield will reflect the heat back into the car. And you've probably experienced this, you know, the car is in a parking lot and maybe it's a warm summer's day and the windows are rolled up and you get in and you open the door and it's like an oven. It's too hot to get into.
Yes.
That's due to the greenhouse effect. So
and Lorna said, hey, that's called the greenhouse effect. That's absolutely correct. She also asked, was it stuffy? It got pretty stuffy in there. I didn't realize it. And then I opened the door and it was a nice burst of fresh air.
Well, I remember opening up the door after it's been sitting in a parking lot in the summer. The car's been sitting in a parking lot in the summer, opening up the door, and you get this blast of hot air. And it's like, wait a minute, let's open up all the doors for a minute and let the car cool off a little bit because of the greenhouse effect. Now, the greenhouse effect on the planet is a great thing because without it, this planet would really be a lot colder. So the greenhouse effect on the planet is good because it keeps the planet warm. But like anything else, even your cookies and candy, too much of a good thing is not good.
That's right.
And what could happen, there are clouds and other sorts of chemicals, carbon dioxide in the air. And
that's the stuff that I breathe out.
That's right. And it's the stuff that comes out of the back of cars too, and machines, and you see smokestacks and stuff is coming out of that's carbon dioxide, and it could be other things too. but this carbon dioxide and clouds will, once I have a little earth here. So once the heat comes in, the sunlight comes in, you have clouds over it, and the clouds keep the heat in here. And it could get too hot, just like we were talking about with a car in the summertime with the windows closed. So if it gets too hot, that's not good, because it could melt a lot of ice that's on land, and some scientists think that that could lead to problems with increased temperature of the earth. And some scientists believe it's due to burning of fuels like coal and oil and gasoline. And this creates too much carbon dioxide.
Too much of a good thing?
Right. And that could raise sea levels, which is fine if you're living in the mountains, not so good if you're living on the coast. Because then instead of the water being, 50 feet down there, all of a sudden the water could be up to your second floor window. Not so good.
Not so good. Lorna says that she likes the greenhouse effect when it's in the right places and times. Yeah, that's good. You're right.
Me too.
Yeah.
And we need the greenhouse effect a little bit, not too much.
Right.
Some scientists believe that the greenhouse effect can also cause stronger storms and extinction of some animals. That means some animals will die off and no longer be around because it could be too hot for them, or it could be the place where they live, their habitat, to get destroyed because it's too hot. So
if any of you were watching our webinars yesterday and you were watching Sterling's, he was talking about animals of long ago. He was talking about dinosaurs and different periods of time on the earth. There was a time when the earth was much colder than it is right now.
Right.
There was a time when the earth was much, much hotter than it is right now.
That's right.
And each time the temperature shifted a lot like that, a lot of animals, a lot of species died. Dinosaurs aren't here anymore. It's not the right weather for them.
That's a good thing. I don't mind that dinosaurs are not here.
It can definitely be a good thing for us. Sterling found that there was a crocodile from 130 million years ago that was 30 feet long.
Wow.
It was as big as a bus.
Wow.
Yes. Now, Ethan has a very pressing question. And Ethan, you've been very patient. Thank you for asking this a few times. He asks if we like bananas. I love bananas.
Yes, I like bananas.
Love them. And I can't grow them here in Oregon because it's not warm enough. But I think that if I made a greenhouse and I set everything up the right way, I could probably grow a banana tree if I kept it warm enough.
You probably could, but and that would be a good thing. We could grow bananas here in Oregon. The problem is where bananas usually grow, it would be too hot to grow anything, and there wouldn't be any water for people to survive there. So what if you're in South America or something where they grow bananas and all of a sudden it's not 90 degrees outside, it's 120 degrees. Oops,
ooh, that's too hot. That's too hot for me. No thanks.
And so
I'll take 70.
Right. And so the water could disappear, it could evaporate, go into the air, and it could lead to all sorts of problems. Now, I'm not going to be around in 50 years, but chances are you'll be. This is your earth that you're going to be inheriting. And the reason I'm talking to you about this is because I want you to understand that, yes, it's a good thing we're taking care of our planet. Yes, it's a good thing that we're having cleaner air and cleaner water and taking steps to make things cleaner and better for our planet so they'll be cleaner and better for us. But we still have some problems here and on this planet, and I'd like to encourage you. Wouldn't it be wonderful if you were the person who, we have a great Pacific garbage patch. Wouldn't it be wonderful if you're the person who discovers a way to get bacteria or something to eat this plastic so that there is no great Pacific garbage patch? Wouldn't that be wonderful? Wouldn't that be wonderful if you're the one who finds cures for diseases? Wouldn't it be wonderful if you help find a way to prevent COVID-19 or other diseases that we might have in the future? Wouldn't it be wonderful if you had a hand in that, in helping mankind? The way to do that is to find out more about science and to, you know, there are lots of doctors and lots of nurses and lots of people who are being scientists and discovering things and earning a living. And that's their job, to help people and help the environment. I'm just want to encourage you to do that. Now, there's the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Now, some of you might not have heard about the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, but it's this, there's a picture of part of it.
Yuck.
It is, there's the Pacific Ocean, the biggest ocean we have on the planet. And so there are sections of it which have the, what you just saw in that picture, have these floating plastic bottles and all of these other things. And that's not helping our planet. And so we have a Pacific Garbage Patch. If you know how big Texas is, the Pacific Garbage Patch is more than twice the size of Texas. I found that frightening and
disgusting.
Disgusting, right? And so,
and not all of it looks exactly like that picture. That's one part of it. It's one piece of it. But the point is that there is this super polluted section of the Pacific Ocean. It should not be twice the size of Texas. It should not even be the size of Texas, or even Delaware, I think.
Or Rhode Island.
Especially not Rhode Island. I drove through Rhode Island last October, and I actually almost missed it. The state was so small.
It's so small.
I wasn't paying attention, and it said, you know, you are now leaving Rhode Island. I didn't realize I'd entered Rhode Island, but that's not the point. The point is, wouldn't it be great if that Pacific Garbage Patch, it's called the Great Pacific Garbage. I don't think it's so great. I think it's terrible.
Well, they mean great by large.
Right, exactly.
So science is the study of nature and the physical universe. And the word science comes from the Latin scientia, which means, I like to say that word, which means knowledge. And the human race, people, have problems. Problems with COVID-19, problems with the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, problems with global warming, problems with all sorts of things. And I believe the solution to these problems lie in science, in discovering new things. Could you imagine if we discovered a way to use energy that wasn't polluting? We wouldn't be throwing all of these carbon dioxide and tailpipes from that wouldn't be coming out into our air.
That'd be amazing.
That would be amazing. And scientists are working on it. But you're the next generation. You're the next group who will come up with scientific ways of doing things which will be cleaner and better for the environment, better for the planet, better for mankind. And so what I want to invite you to do is learn more about science so that you can help mankind with these problems we're having, and to have a safer and healthier future. Now we have a couple of more pictures. Let's take a look.
And by the way, so this this background that I have going here, it's on a few-minute loop. I just liked this section of the video the best. And if any of you recognize, it's hard to see right now, but it'll loop back in a minute. If any of you can recognize what part of the planet that we're flying over here, go ahead and put it into the Q&A. There we go. It just reset. I think this is the best. I think I know.
Oh yeah, I know where that is.
Right. I'm pretty sure I know where this is.
I know where that is.
Okay, good. Anyway, if any of you have any guesses, put it into the.
You scoot over so they can see it. I know where that is.
It's Earth.
Okay.
Africa.
Yeah, Africa, and there's the
Yep. Ethan, Cyprus,
Mediterranean
Cyrus.
right here.
Yep.
And here's Europe up this way.
Or maybe that's Africa there, and Europe is over there.
Could
there. It's hard to do it with the green screen. Everything.
No, I think
backwards.
that's Africa down here. This is
Okay.
the Mediterranean, and then earlier we saw the Red Sea. Anyway,
it's definitely the Mediterranean. Good job, everyone.
okay. So
all right. Wow,
next
a lot of people said that. Holy cow. Okay. Good.
Okay, well done. Let's
right.
bring up our next picture, unless you have some questions.
Let me bring up the next picture.
So in the state of Oregon, it is illegal. They don't give off these little plastic bags that they used to. You might have remembered going to the store and they have the plastic bags and you throw the stuff in the plastic bags.
And then the plastic bag breaks and everything falls onto the ground.
And you throw the plastic bag in the trash and
you get two more.
And it stays in. It doesn't break down. That plastic can last thousands of years. As thin as it is, it could last a long time. And how many plastic bags did we use? I mean, you think of all the people in Oregon and even in the country that use these plastic bags, you could have mountains and mountains of this plastic that just clogs up the area, the environment.
Yeah, or it creates a patch in the Pacific Ocean twice the size of Texas.
Right. So that's no good. So in Oregon, as of January 1st of this year, 2020, they don't let you use, they don't have these plastic bags anymore. You either bring your own bag or you can buy a paper bag for a nickel, or you carry the stuff out in your arms, but they don't give out these plastic bags. And while it might be a little inconvenient, it's helping our environment, it's helping the planet, and that'll help us in the long run. So we don't want to have any larger Pacific garbage patch than we already have. And let's bring up our last picture.
Okay. And before we get into there, Lorna's asking, and Lorna, thank you for asking this a few times. She said, do you know what people need to invent? And I feel like you have an answer you want to tell us. I feel like you have an idea. Please do put that idea in the Q&A section. I've got a few ideas, but I like your ideas. So
I know I'd like some things too, but it's a good idea. What do you think you would like to discover or invent to help the planet, to help our spaceship we call Earth be a healthier spaceship? Here, this picture says one reusable bag. That's the kind we can buy at the store for $1. That can save 22. We could use that 22,000 times, and it'll save 22,000 plastic bags from messing up the environment and winding up floating around in the street or in trash or having mountains of this stuff.
Wow.
22,000.
That would actually be a small mountain.
That would be.
That makes me feel so much better for using my cloth bags when I go to the store.
Right. And that's why the law was passed, because it's an effort on the part of people who make laws to try and help the planet, stay cleaner, stay neater, and not have more pollution and more trash, which will take thousands of years to break down. So what suggestions do we have?
Okay, well, my idea was a birthday cake that can sing happy birthday to you, but that doesn't really help.
That's low on the list.
I just think it's a cool idea. It doesn't really help. Okay, Lily asks, how are you guys in outer space with no air? If we were actually in outer space, we would be in big trouble right now because we would have no air.
We can't hold our breath that long.
Luckily, it's just an effect. It's just an effect. All right, Lorna says, a car that runs on compost. Okay, now you're thinking.
Okay.
Compost, for those of you who don't know, is like scraps of food, leftover stuff that will decompose on its own. You know, like you eat most of a salad, but you scrape some of it away, and you eat most of the pasta, and then you throw out. There's always just a little bit left over, even if it's just some sauce, and you've got your eggshells from your eggs that you cook your scrambled
coffee
eggs,
grounds,
plenty of coffee grounds, and this stuff can be used to, as it sits there and decomposes, it can give off gases, and those gases can then be burned and used as a kind of a natural fuel.
Right. Also, the compost is good for growing things.
Yes.
Growing things is a great way to take carbon dioxide out of the air, because plants take in carbon dioxide and they give out oxygen. So it's sort of the opposite of what people do. People and engines breathe in oxygen and breathe out carbon dioxide. So we need plants, because without plants, we would have used up all the oxygen on this planet long ago. Plants do the opposite. They breathe in the carbon dioxide, they make food out of it, and they take that and water and sunlight and make food out of it, and then they breathe out oxygen so we can breathe. It's sort of this helpful kind of relationship that we have with plants. So another thing compost can do is it can help plants grow. So not only will you not have so much trash for the trash man to pick up, but you could help the planet by having things grow in a garden using the compost. I think one of the biggest things in my lifetime are cars that run on batteries, or hybrid cars that sometimes run on batteries and sometimes run on gasoline, but they're still very efficient. My son has a hybrid car, and it could get between 40 and 50 miles to the gallon. And I think that's awesome. But wouldn't it be great if we could, I was just reading an article that, what solar panels are? These little, you might have seen them in the stores or on top of people's roofs, and they take sunlight and they change it into energy, electricity. So instead of burning coal or burning gas or burning gasoline or burning oil to make electricity, it uses sunlight. And so I was reading an article how these solar panels or sun panels are becoming more and more and more efficient. When I was growing up, it was like 10%, 15%. Even now, I did 20, 25%. So these people got 40% efficient, and they're hoping to arrange things so they can get 50%. So maybe you could be someone who works on solar panels and make them more efficient, so we use less burning of coal and less burning of gasoline and oil, and save the environment, make it a better planet, a healthier planet. So you probably have your own ideas. James, do we have any ideas?
Yeah, so there's a few ideas in here that I'll read out.
Okay.
Cypress said a plastic running car, like maybe a car that uses plastic as fuel. That's not a bad idea. There we go. Milo says electric cars.
Yeah.
That's what I want. I want an electric car.
Yeah.
Hartley says solar energy cars. That's a great idea. And I think some people have shared your idea with you. I know that some cars have started having little solar panels built into the roof and stuff like that. And it doesn't run the entire car, but it definitely helps. It adds some energy there.
Yeah.
And like you said, solar panels are getting better and better. They're getting cheaper and cheaper. Maybe Hartley is going to be like, maybe you're the one to really figure this out. And you're like, the whole thing is solar panels. It looks like a TIE fighter and it runs all on solar power. And there we go.
Yeah.
I would buy your car. All right. Caleb also said solar powered car. Yeah. All right. Alette says, I want to invent something that will make plastic into something that you can use to make furniture. That's a great idea.
Wow.
Recycling.
Yeah. Recycling a plastic, whatever, house or a plastic greenhouse. Yeah.
Ethan says we could make bags out of banana peels. That's a great idea. Yeah.
Okay.
Planting more trees is a great idea, Javier says.
That's right.
Good. Cypress says reusable water bottles from recycled plastic.
Right. So if you have a water bottle, when you're done with it, reuse it. Don't take it and throw it away
Mhm.
and get another one. Just reuse it, and that'll help the planet not have so much plastic to get rid of.
Yeah. Isha says, I think a good invention is a plane that runs on solar energy. Yeah, I was reading about a test plane. There's no one on it. It was unmanned, but it stayed in the air for a month, and it was basically one big long wing with some propellers on it. It was very light, and it used solar energy to keep those propellers running for a month. Yeah.
So the way to do these, I mean, the way to do this is to learn more about science. To help the planet, you have to know science. You have to know the study of nature and the way the world works. And so that's why I teach science. That's why I hope you'll get inspired to learn more about science, to come up with these great ways to help the planet survive better, so people will survive in a cleaner environment, in a cleaner kind of area. So we don't have all of these the stuff in the air from burned gases and oils, and the stuff in the water from
So we don't have like Erie catching on fire.
Erie catching on fire, or the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Maybe you could figure out a way to do that, to help with that, or to help fish, or to help whatever, and make the planet a better, safer, more friendly place to live.
That's right. I'm going to read two more ideas out. We're over time already, but there were two more ideas here I wanted to read really quick. Ethan suggested that we can make bags out of bananas. He says, technically, it's already energy. It's just changing it from heat energy to electricity.
Right.
Oh, that was one idea. And then he said we could make bags out of bananas. I want a banana bag now. And Milo said, how about cars running on carbon dioxide and producing oxygen? Milo, I want you to make that car. I will buy that car.
If you could do that, wouldn't that be a change the whole game?
That would change everything.
That would change everything.
We are over time. I'm going to hang around for a few minutes after we end the broadcast in the Q&A section to answer just a few more questions. If I didn't get to read your idea out, I'm sorry. Thank you so much for joining us today. You can go to heronbooks.com. We didn't use any of their curriculum in our webinar today. We wanted to talk specifically about Earth Day because Earth Day is tomorrow.
50th anniversary.
50th anniversary.
Big deal.
Of Earth Day.
Yeah.
But go to heronbooks.com. There's a lot of really great curriculum on that site, a lot of science curriculum, a lot to learn about the planet. Use the promo code Delphian30.
There's a curriculum, there's a booklet from heronbooks.com about air.
There you go. You can learn even more about air.
So remember, the cure for boredom is curiosity. So stay curious, and I hope you can help this planet and make this a better world for not me and James, but for your generation and for you and your children when you do have children, if you do have children.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye for now.